I did a review on this channel on some Adam Audio A7V small active speakers, and I know active speakers are hard for audiophiles to get their heads around because we tend to build our systems on passive speakers, amps and DACs. But if you're in the market for another pair of speakers, maybe for a second system for another room, and you want an active setup for simplicity, you should look at studio type monitor brands, because I've tended to find they offer way more value for money in terms of sonic sound character than comparable audiophile brand offerings. But I wanted to try out compatible room correction software with these speakers because I've had very good experiences of using Dirac with the NAD, M10 and M33. So this video is a setup guide and experience video of my thoughts of using this software with Adam Audio A-series speakers. Also, it's for people who generally want to get an idea of what room correction software can bring, and also using room correction software in analog setups. And I should say that, as I explained in my previous video, these speakers from Adam Audio are not just for active desktop systems in the near field environment. You can use them in hi-fi systems, and there's no reason why you shouldn't. So Sonarworks, who make this Sound ID reference room correction software, which is primarily for pro audio installations, they sent me a calibrated Sound ID reference microphone with a subscription pack, and I got the €300 speaker and headphone pack. You can buy the microphone separately, or you can add it into respective packs that you buy. So this is kind of like Dirac Live type prices. You can, I think, get a 60-day free trial with compatible Adam Audio A-series monitors. Conceivably, you could do a test, feed it back into the speakers, and then have done with it and not need to buy the actual full software version. I don't know whether that is actually the case. I can't say categorically because I didn't go through right to the end with the free trial. I used this subscription that I was given. But bear in mind, obviously, if you move the speakers ever so slightly, you're going to need to recalibrate the system. So obviously the full subscription has that benefit. This video is actually confined to my experiences of setting this software up, which is available on Mac OS and Windows, and obviously my sound impressions too. But I've asked Sonarworks to have a chat with me to go through some more technical aspects of this software, how you use it in combination with room treatments, which can be an incredibly complicated area of hi-fi. And I don't want to make my hi-fi content too boring and too overly technical, because I don't really believe that that helps many people or anyone. It really just is for the anoraks, and I don't want this channel to be like that. But I also wanted to ask them about how their software is perceived, because there's a lot of naysayer videos on YouTube about certain technical aspects of it. Obviously, I can't cover everything in one video as well. This calibrated microphone comes with its reference number that you actually put into the software because it has its own specific measured response, so it has to be tailored to the software. But I had to go out and actually buy a USB interface to connect everything up. I went to my local music shop, Guitar Amplifier Keyboard Centre in Brighton, and they sold me this Volt 1 USB interface. It's a sort of device that you might use as an amateur musician to feed a microphone or guitar or keyboard through it, and then you can pass on the signal to a computer for recording. And this has a dual Amphenol XLR and 1/4 inch analog input socket, if you wonder what these weird XLR sockets are on pro audio gear. But you connect up the Sound ID reference microphone to it using a standard male to female XLR analog cable. And then on the back, there are two 1/4 inch analog outputs to your speakers. I use standard 1/4 inch to XLR cables to connect up the Adam Audio A7Vs. On the front, there is actually a gain dial to adjust the sensitivity of the mic in testing. And then on the right, you've got a volume output to your speakers. but the USB-C connection is for connecting up to compatible USB capable laptops or computers like my MacBook. This is actually an input so far as receiving testing frequency sweep sounds from the software on your computer, but also as an output to send the resulting data back into the software once those tests have been done. Getting down to the nitty gritty, because the A7V's DSP can host saved profiles created in SonarWorks, once you've done the calibration, you can then wing it over to the A7V's using A-Control software to do so. That's Adam Audio's own app. You don't use the various presets on the back that I talked about in my other video, but use the external setting, EXT, which is where the saved profile is stored. It's because this Sound ID reference microphone is a very sensitive condenser mic with its own capacitor in it that it needs its own power supply. So you need to use a USB interface like this Volt 1 that sends power from its analog input to the mic, if that makes sense. This is so-called phantom power, and for this particular reference microphone it requires a standard 48 volts of such power, which this Volt 1 actually outputs. I'm going to talk now about how we set this software up, and once you've done the normal downloading and registering of software, make sure that you've got the correct speaker setup set. In this case I'm using 2-channel for these Adam Audios. Make sure also that phantom power is on and that you've got the USB interface selected as an input device, and then also that you're getting an input signal from your microphone, in this case obviously the SonarWorks ID reference mic. Also make sure that you put in the serial number of the microphone so that you can get the unique calibration profile from it, and then after that start testing your speakers at outputting the right volume by adjusting the gain volume dial on your USB interface.
Left speaker. Right speaker.
You then make sure that the gain for your microphone is set correct until the green input signal is in the ticked area. And then once you've done that, hold the microphone up to each of the speakers so that the software can calculate the distance between them. And similarly, you then move the microphone to your listening position so that you can get a triangulation distance. Obviously, the software is measuring your position on your couch rather than at a desk because we're doing a hi-fi setup. You can then do the frequency response measuring by holding the microphone at different positions, and what happens is that the locating sounds that alternate between the two speakers sense where the microphone is in space, and once you're in the right position it tells you to keep still so that you get a frequency response sweep output from the left and right speakers to measure that particular point. It's then a simple case of saving the output file profile and then loading that profile into the Adam Audio's DSP using their A-Control software. Now, if you're not using Adam Audios, you could do this same calibration and test into active speakers, but obviously you're going to need to keep your laptop and this interface in situ. But for similar reasons, also no reason why you couldn't use this calibration software and interface with a passive system, passive speakers and an analog amplifier, because the interface outputs an analog signal and you could feed that into the analog input of an amplifier. Now, I haven't actually tried this yet, but I will do in the fullness of time, and obviously feed it into my Hagel H390. You obviously want to make sure that you get the best interface that you can, because you're going to be reliant on the quality of the digital to analog converter that's in it. After I actually did the calibration with this software, I opted for the flat frequency response curve that, true to form, did give a pretty flat response, obviously tailoring off down to 44 Hz, the lowest output frequency of these speakers. but I was only ever getting 3/4 of a dB bumps in the frequency response curve at any given point. So it is actually adjusting pretty accurately, and a lot more accurately than some room correction software that I've used, and very Dirac-esque. Personally speaking, I found that changing between the DSP settings on the back of these Adam Audios, the SonarWorks EXT output was easily the best sounding. So think dynamic and intonated bass, placement of sound in the soundstage and instruments in the soundstage very well, and that feeling that you get with room correction software of being enveloped in sound and that you're sort of within the sound. That's very much typical of room correction software. And I've got to say, I'm pretty impressed with this software because also it's easy to use, it's not complicated, and some room correction software that I've used, you need to be almost like, you feel like you have to be an engineer in order to use it. This was very easy to set up without too many options that you need to go through to worry about as to whether you've got it right. I know that some commentators don't particularly like room correction software for 2-channel hi-fi. So if you look at someone like Paul McGowan of PS Audio, he'll say in his videos that he doesn't think it's appropriate. Dirac he only likes for home cinema, but he thinks that you don't need to correct for the high frequencies in room correction software, but it's all about bass. And then on the other hand, you've got people like Taran Sharma, aka the British audiophile. He'll say things like 70% of good sound from a system comes from without having room correction or room correction software, by making sure the speakers are correctly towed in, right distance from walls, and sitting in an equilateral triangle. But I'd say I'm somewhere in the middle and a bit of a pragmatist, because I've sometimes got great sound just out of using different systems and different speakers and amplifiers, and that's pleased me just as much. At the same time, I've got great sound out of using room correction software in various systems. So I'd say there's no hard or fast rules, except that you should try it yourself and see how you get on. And I don't want to blind you with loads of technicalities as to why it definitely does sound better, because I know people that have tried room correction software and room treatments and just preferred it as it was before. So what does that say about all these videos that say that you must have it? It's really down to trial and error. That's what I'm trying to say. That said though, using room correction software alone without room treatments may overcome most of the inability of being able to use room treatments where we share our hi-fi space with our living room. And reviewers with dedicated rooms can go on about how important room treatments are in hi-fi, but I suspect if you look at the average hi-fi setup, most people don't use it. But it's certainly the case that I got great benefit out of using this software without using room treatments myself. Considering this is about a 350 quid-ish upgrade, about $400, when you factor in the subscription, the microphone, the USB interface, and all the cabling you need, I actually think it offers pretty good value for money. I would say that it's worth trying it with these Adam Audio speakers and generally speaking. And let me know how you've got on with it and whether you've used this software or any other software. What's been your experiences? Thanks very much for watching.